Fenimir. It's not to work, I guess. Oh, hello, YouTube. So today we'll be looking at a movie starring one of my favorite actors, Jeffrey Combs. Now, if you check out my Facebook page, Google Plus, or Letterboxd account, then you already know all this, as I talk about his work probably way more than I should, but this is my first video review of it, and it's something that's gotten a bit of attention due to the 2016 Doctor Strange movie. So before we get into the film itself, let's go over its history a little. Marvel wasn't always as successful in the movie industry as they are now. In the late 80s, early 90s, they had major money problems, even filing for bankruptcy in 1996. So they turned to the only one who could save them, the guy who made Puppet Master. This was a brilliant plan. Before filming began, though, Full Moon lost the rights. Not wanting to let it go to waste, Ban combined it with another script he had called Dr. Mortalis, which, fun fact, has concept art done by Jack the King Kirby. It was released in 1992 and was remastered when released on Blu-ray. Although I do wish you were able to change the aspect ratio on it because it's cropped down in the remastered version, and yeah, it's just kind of weird. So with that, let's get into it. Dr. Anton Mordrid is a lecturer with a doctorate in something, but don't worry and do not question his credentials because there is a whole one scene with him giving a lecture. So, yeah, that scene's pretty much just there to be like, hey, look at that, he's giving a lecture. He totally has a doctorate in something, so there is a reason for us to call him Dr. Mordrid, because lecture. See, it's not just because we want to make a Doctor Strange movie. There's a reason for this. Also, there's a cute full moon reference in there, so it's nice. So, yeah, he's a lecturer with a doctorate in something, but also, and what mostly occupies his time, is that he's a sorcerer who says that he's been protecting the Earth for 100 years, but, mostly what we see him do is just sort of wander around his apartment and just sort of be preparing for his evil brother Cabal to break out of another dimension. So, here's my major question. Why don't you just go to this other dimension and defend it there? You'll be protecting Earth if you stop him from breaking out in the first place, and people might not die that way, but oh, no. I mean, a big floating blue pair of eyes in space told you to do this. So yeah, this is clearly a better plan. Go on, keep on building up your little reputation, so then maybe one day, if he does break out because, you weren't there, then maybe, just maybe, you can be able to convince someone on the police force in order to trust your word, so then you can actually defeat him, and then throw away your whole reputation that you spent 100 years building, because it wasn't really that important anyway, because your only job here was to defeat this one guy. Just logic. Just so much logic. So, yeah. Eventually, his evil brother Cabal does escape, and, yeah, this is what it looks like. It's a really intimidating guy, isn't he? So, with Cabal on the loose and ready to enact his evil plan of letting a few demons out of an already open cage. Okay, well, that's not entirely true. Pretty much, they have, like, this steel plate in front of where these demons are locked into a wall, but all that's really holding that thing down is magic, and here's the thing, the whole entire army was killed. You would think that after that, they'd be like, hey, maybe we should, weld this shut or something, I mean, like, it could really be helpful if the spell does wear off, which is exactly what's happening right now, and that's exactly what Cabal wants to do, so you would think, hey, maybe we should put in a little bit more precautions, especially since it's just this one guy left, but no, they're just like, it'll be fine, don't worry, it'll work itself out. So, yeah, with that happening, Mordrid has to call upon the only person who can help him in this scenario. A completely random police consultant. And pretty much what she does in the end is she watches over Mordrid's body as he goes into the astral plane, and as he does everything. So she just sort of sits around and watches over. And when she's actually needed, then Mordrid gets back in his body, so it's not really needed at all. So yeah, she really had a point there. So yeah, Mordrid and Cabal have an epic dinosaur stop motion fight, and eventually Mordrid's able to be victorious. And then he's pretty much done with his job. So then the big blue eyes in the sky decide to tell him, "Oh yeah, okay, go somewhere else. You're no longer needed in this dimension because a few people in this city know about you. So we can't just go to another city or another part of the world. No. This one place found out about you. You're completely compromised." So yeah, he has to leave, but first, him and Samantha, the police consultant, decide to watch It's a Wonderful Life together. Although the way that's said, it sounds like they want to watch their own movie. It's a weird ending line. Honestly, the first few times I watched this, I really did think that he was just talking about their movie in general, but only on this time I was like, oh, they're talking about It's a Wonderful Life. Oh, okay. I mean, like, he wasn't there for that conversation, so how would he have known that? So, like, I don't know, maybe they were talking about their own movie, in which case, I don't know how they would do that, but whatever. This movie is a bit of a mixed bag, admittedly. On a more positive side, it looks much more theatrical. Normally, that's not much of a plus, but considering Band's other works, which are mostly straight to video, and it really does show sometimes, here it looks much more professional. Despite still being low budget, the effects, score, acting, and sets makes it feel like a lot more effort was put into it. That's kind of all the positives I have to say on it for the story part, though, because while there are more in the character section, because the performances in this movie are actually pretty good, there are more negatives when it comes to story. So yeah, let's get into those. One of the big ones is that, well, this movie is just kind of boring, admittedly. There are just big parts of this movie where it's just Mordrid walking around his apartment and preparing for Cabal. Then he's arrested in the police station under suspicion, and that's kind of it for a big part of this movie. And we don't even really get to see what Cabal is doing to be building up him as a suspenseful character or someone that we should be afraid of, especially when Mordrid is locked away in prison. I mean, you would think then that they'd just be like, oh, well, I mean, look at the horrible things that he's doing while this is happening, and Mordrid can't do anything about it. Guess what he's doing? He's sitting on a park bench talking to an old lady. Evil. I'm so scared now. He doesn't even kill her or anything. He just leaves. Why? What was the point of that anyway? Like, he just sort of gets something out of his briefcase and breaks it, which is very counterintuitive to his own plans, admittedly, so it's like, why? Why that whole scene is unneeded. It just shows him going to a museum, and that's kind of it. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. He also does something else really evil. He taunts a little boy. Horrible. Oh, also, that little boy in the museum, he was actually played by Charles Band's son. Actually, there are a few Bands in this. Charles's dad, Albert Band, is in this. He was a bit of a director for times when Charles couldn't do it. And also his brother did the score for it, so that's kind of cool. And honestly, that is one of the things I do really like about this movie, is that I don't know, just sort of knowing that it was a bit of a family project, I don't know, it kind of adds a little bit to it to me. But still, it is pretty boring, and yeah, that is a major problem since that's a big part of the movie, and considering its short runtime, they easily could have put a whole lot more into this, or at least tried to build up Cabal as an interesting villain, because we don't really get to see him that much in this movie, which is really disappointing. Actually, we get to see his henchmen more than him. So I would have really liked it they took some time to maybe actually try and make him intimidating or give him a few more scenes. That way they could have made it a bit longer and, well, then it just could have actually built up his character a bit. But instead, it's just sort of them hanging around doing nothing for a while, and it's admittedly kind of boring. Another problem with this movie is that it feels rushed. I know, a movie that's only like 72 minutes, it felt rushed? Weird, isn't it? But yeah, this movie just feels as short as it really is. It feels like it's all going by very quickly, and it's very incomplete, honestly. Yeah, it's a weird thing. Sometimes it feels like it's going very slow while you're watching it, but then once it's done, you're like, oh, that was it. Huh. And yeah, that's another major problem with it, but also it just feels very incomplete. Now, most of Band's films are, well, franchises, like Ginger Dead Man, The Evil Bong, God, yeah, I know, it's weird. Those are franchises for him, I don't know why. But mostly his biggest one is the Puppet Master franchise, and yeah, so here's my major question. Why didn't we get more of this? I mean, I'm not going to say that I absolutely loved this movie or anything, but honestly, this is one of Band's better films despite its problems, and it feels incomplete. I feel like he was going to do something more with this, just never got around to it, and it's a bit of a disappointment, especially if you check some interviews, because it seemed like the actors actually did want to be a part of this as a franchise, especially someone like Combs, as he said he wanted to sort of play a protagonist a little bit more often, because, well, if you've seen his movies, he does tend to play a villain a lot. Reanimator in the background, so, yeah. So, yeah, he does play a villain a lot, so it would have been kind of nice to see him as a hero of a franchise a little bit, but no, this is kind of one of his few outings into that. Also, Castle Freak is an outing into that, which is a really good movie, and you should check that out. I should just review Castle Freak. I talk about it a lot. It's a good movie. But, yeah, so honestly, I don't get why this never became a franchise. I mean, maybe it was too expensive or something, but still, it did have the potential for it, and I think that there was a whole lot more that could have been done with this, and I would have personally liked to have seen it continue. So, yeah, it just really does sort of feel incomplete, and it's a problem for it, honestly. So, yeah, the movie is both pretty enjoyable, admittedly, as, yeah, I do still have a fun time watching this. I can't lie and say that I don't. It is still a fairly enjoyable film, but that doesn't mean that the problems in it aren't still big problems, and, yeah, they shouldn't really be ignored at all, and, yeah, it can really affect your viewing experience, and yeah, really, it just sort of does go by pretty fast, but also it feels very slow, or that not much was accomplished, and yeah, honestly, that it just doesn't really work in that aspect, but as I'll get into more on the characters, there are still good things about it, and I do still enjoy it to a certain extent, so for the story, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10, as, yeah, it does have its problems, major ones, which, yeah, shouldn't be ignored at all, but it is also still a fairly enjoyable film with some fairly professional-looking effects and sets to it, and just overall, it looks a whole lot better than a lot of other Band things, so if you're a fan of Charles Band's work or Full Moon, then this is definitely one of their better films, and I recommend that you check it out for that. Although, as I've been saying, there are more positives with the characters, so yeah, let's get into them. So for the characters, let's start off with the titular one himself, Dr. Mordrid. Now on paper, he's a likable character, but is pretty cliche. Now, what really makes him work in this movie, though, is Combs' performance. Now, one thing that I really do like about this actor, and one of the reasons why I do enjoy him so much, and why I've watched so many bad movies with him in it, kind of knowing that they were bad, yet still walking into it, is because, well, he tends to, no matter what movie that he's in, he tends to try and do his best. And there's a reason why something like Parasomnia, which is a really bad movie, is ranked so high on my list of his performances, which I have over on Letterboxd, link somewhere, probably. So, yeah, there's a reason why that one's so high on my list there. It's because, well, I just really do enjoy him in that movie, and he really does stand out, and that's why I base my whole entire list there off of his performance alone, not the quality of the film, because if we were doing that, then oh my god, it'd be a massive change. But this is definitely one of those cases where, yeah, he does sort of the same thing, although it's just not particularly a horrible movie. It's a decent one, but still, he gives it the same amount of dedication, and that's something that I really do like about him. But for his performance in this movie, it's really good, and one of the reasons for that is that he adds very subtle touches to the character that I think is really needed. One thing that's in particular stands out is why he's an introvert, or at least was a bit in the movie. Like, why he doesn't really come out of his apartment that much, and why he doesn't really tell anyone that he's the landlord and stuff like that. There's one major reason for this. Well, okay, a bit, but pretty much what's sort of subtly given away is that the reason why is because, well, he's essentially immortal on Earth, or at least in our dimension. Now, we don't really know if he is in any other dimension, but here, seemingly he is, because, well, he's been around for 100 years. And in a stopwatch and in a pocket watch that he always opens up and looks at, well, there's a picture of him with another woman, and it's a very old one. So seemingly he has gotten attached to somebody before, and he lost them because, well, he just can't really age here. And yeah, that honestly is just sort of enough, and that's all they really show you. He never gets into it, he never really talks about it outside of, well, New York was such a nicer place 100 years ago, but still, it's subtly told to you, and something that Combs really can pull off very well is the very subtle touches to a character, and that's definitely no exception here, and it is really what makes his character work a whole lot more in this movie. So, yeah, moving aside from Combs, who I could talk about all day, if anyone wants to continue any conversation about that, feel free to. Seriously, I could talk about this guy for a while. So now, yeah, let's move on to Samantha Hunt. Now, like I said before, she doesn't really do that much by the end of the movie, but just viewing her as a character on her own, she's actually fairly likable to an extent, at the very least. For a love interest, anyway, she's fairly likable. So, pretty much what I like about her the most is that she actually is kind of on even plane with Mordrid. Like, yeah, okay, of course he has way more experience than her and stuff, but she still keeps up fairly well, and she has a lot of knowledge of her own, and she does very much understand it and understand the stakes of everything. And it is really nice to see her just sort of be like, yeah, okay, cool. You told me a story because, like, yeah, a little napkin in front of my face. Yeah, that makes sense. I get it now. Okay, cool. I'll go do this. And yeah, she just sort of is a very helpful character, especially when getting Mordrid out of the police station. And yeah, as is, she's likable enough. She has a bit of snark to her, which is kind of nice. I mean, it's not really there all that much after, like, a scene with Tony, but still, it is still present, and I do like that it was at least there. And also, she has a very curious side, which I think is kind of nice. So yeah, she's not the most likable character or anything, but still, she is likable enough for well, just sort of being the kind of cliche that she is. Then there's Cabal. My god, is he a boring villain. Like, there is really nothing to this guy. He's not even in the movie that much. It's really sort of disappointing. He has one goal, and that's kind of all that he follows through with. And yeah, he's just a pretty boring villain, and honestly, I would have either liked it if he had a kind of over-the-top performance, or it actually was a sort of subdued character, but he has neither of that. It's just a weird in-between, and it's just like, Yeah, he doesn't really have that much to him, and honestly, it is a disappointment. Mostly because it feels like, for one, he's not very intimidating, and two, there's just not that much to him, even though I think that maybe if he had a few more scenes, then they could have done something with him, but mostly he's just sort of wasted potential here, and it's a bit of a disappointment. Then there's Tony. He's got like 3 scenes, maybe 5, but he's a cop, and yeah, that's kind of it. It's kind of all that he is. There's nothing else really to him, but for being a pretty cliche cop character, he's likable enough. I mean, he's not really a bad guy in any way or seen as one, or it's not like he's a corrupt cop or anything, so I mean, he's fine. It's just kind of just sort of there, and that's kind of all. Then there's Gunner. He's Mordred's friend from another dimension, and I honestly kind of like Gunner in this movie. He only has like maybe 3 scenes, but for those scenes that he has, he's pretty likable in it. You can really tell there is a sort of strong history between Mordred and him, and honestly, I think that's what really makes him work. That, and he's a little bit more of a fun sort of side to him, which is pretty nice, especially considering what type of job he has and what happened to him, which is pretty much he saw every one of his friends die and then had his eyes burnt out. But yeah, he still finds time to laugh about it, so that's nice. So yeah, like I said, he's a pretty likable character, and I think should be discussed a little bit more in terms of this movie, because, I don't know, I like him enough, especially for how little he's in it. Then there's Adrian, who I really can't decide if he's so over the top that he's obnoxious, or so over the top that he's a lot of fun. Pretty much, he's Cabal's henchman, and he's given immortality for a whole 12 hours. But then, for absolutely no reason, Cabal decides that's way too long, but, you know, I mean, it's been like an hour or two, so he totally finished the job, so it's okay. I should just get rid of his immortality for absolutely no reason. And we wonder why Cabal was defeated in, like, one fight scene. But yeah, anyway, so Adrian actually gets more screen time than Cabal, which is really weird, but also he's pretty much an anarchist character that's given immortality and ends almost every single sentence with an F-bomb. Again, I cannot decide if he is extremely annoying or just so much fun, but it's like a weird in between of both, and I enjoy him enough for that. Then we finally have the last one, which is the Monitor, aka Blue Eyes in space. And yeah, it's kind of as stupid as that is. So yeah, that's kind of all that he is, just blue eyes in space, and we never really know anything about him. He just sort of says, "Hey, Mordred, do this thing," and then he's like, "Oh, okay, sweet, I'll do it." So I guess that he's in charge of everything, but they never really get into why, who he is, or why he even matters. He's just there. So for the characters overall, they can honestly be okay. Even some of the side characters do get enough personality to them, mostly brought in by the performances, and they are definitely one of the better parts of this movie. So for the characters, I'm going to give them a 7.5. They're okay, but yeah, there are still some that could use some more work, or could use some more explaining, or just need more time, but still, overall, I do like them for what they are. For this movie overall, despite being pretty boring, not using characters to their full potential, being short, and still not really giving a lot of characters enough screen time, and just overall having a kind of mixed tone, it still is a fairly enjoyable movie with some pretty good performances in it and decent effects work. I would recommend it just for that. Like, if you're a fan of some of the actors in this, or if you're a fan of Charles Band's company himself, or just his films, then this is one of his better works. So I would recommend it for that. So, overall, I think I'll give it a 7 out of 10. It's not perfect by any means, but it's still enjoyable enough for what it is. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this one, and next Okay, let's just admit it won't be next week. I mean, if the time between this review and the last one is any indication, yeah, it's probably not gonna be next week. Even if I weren't going on vacation, which by the way, I'm going on vacation. So yeah, even if I weren't going on vacation, then it probably still wouldn't have been next week. So yeah, anyway, for the next review, let's get dangerous.